Okay, let's unpack this. What if something microscopic, like living inside you right now, was subtly nudging your mood, tweaking your cravings, maybe even influencing those everyday decisions?
Yeah.
It sounds a bit like, I don't know, low-budget sci-fi, doesn't it? But what if there was actually a kernel of truth to this idea? This sort of mind control happening on a scale we're only just beginning to grasp.
Well, what's fascinating here is that this isn't entirely in the realm of fiction. We're diving into the world of the human microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
This vast and incredibly diverse community of bacteria, fungi, viruses, other microorganisms living in and on us.
Right.
Think of it like an inner ecosystem spread across your gut, obviously, but also your mouth, your skin, even your lungs and urinary tract.
Exactly. And this whole microscopic world within you, this is something you've clearly been digging into. You've shared some really interesting recent research, and it seems driven by, well, your curiosity about living a long, healthy life, right? Achieving that sense of inner balance
Mhm.
and understanding how our internal world and our external world might connect, how they shape our personal experience. And the sources you sent over, they're quite a mix. You've got detailed scientific investigations, but also some truly radical ideas linking consciousness, even intergalactic relationships to our tiny microbial inhabitants. It's quite a spectrum.
It is. So what's the core insight we're aiming for as we explore all this material? Our mission, really, in this deep dive, is to extract the most compelling knowledge about the human microbiome across these different body systems.
Okay.
We want to understand what influences this inner world, things like our diet, obviously, the environment we live in, and even those intriguing suggestions about electromagnetic fields.
Right. Those are interesting.
And crucially, we want to uncover the surprising ways our microbiome is linked to our health, our longevity, and maybe even our mental and social well-being. The goal is clarity, engaging insights, and without getting totally bogged down in the jargon.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So where exactly do these microscopic tenants of ours make their home? Where are they concentrated?
Well, the distribution across the body is quite remarkable. The gut, the gastrointestinal tract, is like the undisputed powerhouse.
Mhm.
It hosts the largest and most diverse microbial community by far.
Okay.
While, specific percentages can vary a lot between people, it's clear the gut is the primary hub. After the gut, you've got areas like the oral cavity and the skin with pretty significant communities too. And then smaller but still important populations in the airways and the urogenital tract.
So the vast majority are really concentrated in our gut. That really emphasizes its importance, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And it makes sense that each of these locations would have its own unique microbial makeup, right? I mean, different environments, different conditions that would favor different types of microbes.
Precisely. Each site hosts a really distinct microbial community specifically adapted to its local conditions.
Yep.
So, for instance, the gut is dominated by these big groups, these phyla, like firmicutes. They're now called Bacillota and Bacteroides or Bacteroidota, plus actinobacteria and even some ancient microorganisms called archaea. But then you look at your skin, and you'll find a different cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Often led by actinobacteria, especially Cutibacterium, alongside firmicutes like Staphylococcus and Streptococcus. Even fungi like Malassezia. And in the vaginal microbiome, lactobacillus species are often the dominant players. But what's really key to understand is that these aren't isolated islands. They constantly interact with our bodies. And significant shifts in these populations can happen in disease. It really highlights the delicate balance within these microbial ecosystems and just how important they are for our health.
Okay, so the gut is the main stage, the center of this microbiome universe. What makes it so incredibly diverse compared to the others?
Well, its sheer density is just astounding. We're talking trillions of microorganisms packed in there. Yeah, it's a huge number. And the variety is equally impressive, with potentially thousands of different species coexisting. As we mentioned, the major groups at that high level, the phylum level, are firmicutes, Bacillota and Bacteroidota, plus actinobacteria and archaea. And each of these contributes unique functions to this really complex ecosystem.
And I remember seeing in the research you shared that this gut diversity isn't like uniform across the globe. It varies geographically.
That's a crucial insight, yeah. Large-scale global studies, where they've analyzed gut microbiomes from many different populations, have revealed these fascinating geographical patterns. Interestingly, regions like Latin America and the Caribbean seem to show particularly high levels of gut microbial diversity.
Interesting.
But it's also really important to note that certain areas, like parts of Central and Southern Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, have historically been, well, undersampled in this research.
Uh,
But as scientists have started, including more data from these previously understudied populations, especially in rural Africa, they've uncovered this wealth of new microbial lineages. It's significantly expanded our overall understanding of gut microbiome diversity.
wow.
It just underscores how much more there is to learn,
Yeah.
particularly in diverse non-Western populations.
So, where you live and presumably what you eat must have a profound influence on the community of microbes in your gut.
Oh, absolutely. Scientists have even identified these broad dietary patterns that seem to sculpt the gut microbiome. They call them enterotypes.
Heterotypes, okay.
Yeah, think of them as different general microbial profiles that are linked to long-term dietary habits. So, for example, diets rich in fiber tend to foster a gut environment where bacteria like Prevotella really thrive.
Right.
Conversely, more typical Western diets, often higher in animal fats, processed foods, they tend to be associated with a gut microbiome where bacteroid species are more dominant. There's even evidence suggesting that individuals with a higher ratio of Prevotella to bacteroids might actually experience greater weight loss when they follow a high-fiber diet.
That's specific.
Yeah. And it's not just about what you restrict, actively including fermented foods, yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, or prebiotics, which are types of fiber that feed beneficial bacteria.
Like in onions and garlic.
Exactly. Onions, garlic, artichokes, things like that. That can also enrich the diversity of your gut microbiome. These dietary choices act like, well, fertilizer and specific food sources for different microbial populations in your gut.
And the reverse is also true, right? That typical high-sugar, low-fiber Western diet.
Yeah.
It's not exactly throwing a party for the good gut microbes, is it?
Precisely. That kind of dietary pattern often leads to a decrease in the overall variety of microbes in the gut. And unfortunately, it can promote the growth of bacteria that contribute to inflammation. That's imbalance, which scientists call dysbiosis.
Dysbiosis, right.
It's been increasingly linked to a whole range of health issues. Everything from inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and even conditions affecting mental well-being.
Mental well-being, too. Wow.
Yeah, for instance, research has shown that individuals with IBD or depression often have reduced levels of a really beneficial bacterium called Faecalibacterium and increased levels of pro-inflammatory bacteria. It just highlights how our food choices directly impact the composition and function of our gut microbiome, with pretty significant consequences for our health.
But it's not all doom and gloom in the gut, is it? I remember reading about these short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs. They sound like the good guys.
They are indeed. SCFAs like butyrate, acetate, and propionate are produced when our gut microbes ferment the fiber we eat. Think of them as really valuable byproducts of microbial digestion. These SCFAs are incredibly beneficial for gut health. They provide a primary energy source for the cells lining our colon, they help regulate our immune system within the gut, and they even play a role in communication with the brain. Which leads us to the fascinating concept of the gut-brain axis.
The gut-brain axis. Okay, it sounds like a constant conversation happening between our belly and our brain, like a hotline.
Exactly that. It's a bidirectional communication network. Our gut microbiota and our brain are in constant contact via neural pathways, hormones, immune signals, the whole shebang.
Wow.
What's truly remarkable is that the gut microbiome can actually produce neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that affect mood and behavior or precursors to these neurotransmitters, like serotonin and GABA.
They make neurotransmitters.
Some of them, yes, or the building blocks for them. And they also produce those SCFAs we just discussed, which can enter the bloodstream and influence brain function. This really underscores that the gut microbiome isn't just a passive collection of microbes, it's an active participant in our overall physiology. It co-evolved with us and responds really rapidly to changes in our environment.
So when we talk about environmental influences on the gut, it's about more than just the food we swallow. It's broader than that.
Oh, absolutely. While diet is a cornerstone, like we said, fiber-rich diets tend to cultivate beneficial SCFA producers, while high-fat, high-sugar diets can favor less desirable microbes. Several other significant factors are definitely at play.
Okay, like what?
Well, antibiotics, for example. Crucial in fighting infections, obviously.
Yeah.
But they can have a dramatic impact on the gut microbiome. They often reduce its diversity and, unfortunately, can select for bacteria that are resistant to these drugs.
Right, the resistance problem.
Exactly. And these changes can sometimes have long-lasting effects on our metabolism and immune function.
And geography seems to be a key determinant, too, based on what you said earlier about global diversity.
It is. Rural and traditional lifestyles, often seen in communities with closer ties to the land and maybe more diverse, less processed diets. They tend to be associated with unique microbial species and a greater overall richness in the gut compared to the more sort of homogenized gut profiles often observed in urban Western populations.
Huh.
Factors like the types of soil microbes we're exposed to, the diversity of plant life in the local environment, traditional food preparation methods, they all contribute to these regional differences.
Right.
And interestingly, even when people migrate from one region to another, their gut microbiome can gradually shift towards the profile more typical of their new environment. It really highlights the adaptability of these microbial communities.
We touched on pollutants briefly. It's concerning to think that our microscopic residents are also interacting with, well, the industrial byproducts we release into the environment.
It is. Exposure to things like heavy metals, pesticides, various industrial chemicals, it can indeed alter the composition and function of our gut microbiome. But interestingly, microbes can evolve and adapt to these challenges. Sometimes they acquire genes that enable them to detoxify these harmful substances. So the quality of our water, the air we breathe in industrialized areas, it can actually exert a selective pressure on our gut microbes, favoring those with the capacity to process these foreign compounds.
Wow, the resilience of these microbes is quite something. And what about those whispers of electromagnetic field influencing our gut? That still feels a bit like uncharted territory, doesn't it?
It is definitely an area of emerging research, and currently, the majority of evidence comes from studies in animal models.
Okay.
Some research in mice exposed to radiofrequency radiation, sort of within the 5G range, for several weeks showed a decrease in the diversity of their gut microbiome and alterations in their metabolic byproducts. Similarly, another study that shielded mice from Earth's natural geomagnetic field also observed changes in their gut microbiota and a reduction in the production of those beneficial SCFAs.
Interesting.
But it's really crucial to emphasize that the relevance of these findings to human health is still very much under investigation. We need a lot more research to understand if and how electromagnetic fields might impact the human microbiome.
Gotcha. Okay, so a diverse and thriving gut seems really important. Does that connect to how long we might live? Is there a longevity link?
There's a growing body of evidence suggesting exactly that, yeah. A link between the diversity and balance of our gut microbiome and our overall lifespan. Studies comparing the gut microbiota of centenarians, people who live past 100 with younger individuals, often reveal that the centenarians harbor more diverse and functionally rich microbial communities. Yeah. For example, research in regions known for longevity, like certain areas in China, has found that centenarians tend to have a higher diversity of gut bacteria. They often have an enrichment of beneficial groups like Lactobacillus, Akkermansia, and Roseburia.
Huh.
They also tend to have more microbial genes associated with detoxifying harmful substances and combating oxidative stress.
Oh.
And furthermore, these age-associated microbial profiles often correlate with other markers of good health. So while it's definitely a complex interplay, a gut microbiome that's rich in SCFA-producing bacteria and diverse anaerobic species appears to be associated with lower levels of inflammation. And inflammation is increasingly recognized as a key driver of aging.
You also mentioned this intriguing idea of a brain microbiome. That sounds pretty groundbreaking, but also, I don't know, a little hard to believe. Is that real?
It is definitely an emerging and still quite controversial area of research.
Yeah.
For a long time, the central nervous system, the brain included, was considered to be sterile, like completely protected.
Yeah.
However, more sensitive detection methods have allowed researchers to identify bacterial or fungal DNA in brain tissue, particularly in individuals with neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Okay.
This has sparked the hypothesis that microbes might actually reside in the CNS in certain circumstances. But, and this is a big but, it remains a topic of intense debate. The possibility of contamination during sample collection and analysis is a really significant concern.
Contamination. Right.
So while the idea of a brain microbiome is captivating, the evidence to definitively support a resident microbial community in the healthy brain, it's just not conclusive yet.
Okay, so maybe we don't have tiny cities of microbes setting up shop in our brains just yet. But we definitely know that our gut and our brain are in constant communication. That axis you mentioned.
Absolutely. The gut-brain axis is a well-established biological reality. It's this incredible two-way communication superhighway, like we said, using neural pathways, hormones, immune signals, the works. And as we discussed earlier, the microbes in our gut are capable of producing or their precursors and those short-chain fatty acids. These molecules can indeed cross the blood-brain barrier and influence our mood, our stress response, even our behavior.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is. And we're seeing more and more research linking imbalances in the gut microbiome, the dysbiosis, to various neurological and psychiatric conditions. Studies in animal models, for example, have shown that altering the gut microbiome can actually induce anxiety-like or depressive-like behaviors.
Wow.
And numerous human studies have found differences in the gut flora of individuals with conditions like depression, autism spectrum disorder, and Parkinson's disease.
It's quite amazing to think that the bacteria in our gut could be playing a role in something as complex as our anxiety levels or even, I don't know, aspects of our personality.
It is. One fascinating study in humans even found a correlation between the diversity of an individual's gut microbiome composition and certain personality traits, specifically the balance between sociability and neuroticism.
No way.
Yeah. Interestingly, individuals who reported having larger social networks tended to have more diverse gut microbiome, while those with higher levels of stress and anxiety often had lower diversity.
Ah.
Now, correlation isn't causation, of course, but it suggests a potential link between our internal microbial ecosystem and our emotional well-being, our social interactions, possibly mediated through the way our gut microbes influence our brain chemistry. Overall, a healthy, balanced gut microbiome really does seem fundamental for both our mental and cognitive health.
So the gut gets a lot of attention, and rightly so, it seems. But what about the other microbial communities throughout our body? Are they just like supporting players in this microbiome drama?
Not at all. While the gut definitely harbors the largest population, the microbiomes at other body sites have their own unique compositions and play crucial site-specific roles in our health.
Okay.
Take the lungs, for instance. Compared to the gut, they have a much lower density of microbes, right?
Yeah.
And the community there is largely influenced by microbes that migrate down from our oral cavity. In healthy lungs, you'll typically find genera like Prevotella, Veillonella, and Streptococcus. However, in individuals with lung diseases like asthma or COPD, there's often a shift in this community. You see an increase in certain types of bacteria, like proteobacteria, particularly Haemophilus, and usually a decrease in overall diversity. In cystic fibrosis, there's often an overgrowth of Pseudomonas. And interestingly, researchers are also exploring the concept of a lung-gut axis, suggesting the health and microbial balance of our lungs and our gut might actually be interconnected.
That makes intuitive sense, yeah, given how interconnected all our body systems are. What about our skin? It's our largest interface with the external world, right? It must have its own unique microbial story.
Exactly. The skin hosts a sparse, maybe compared to the gut, but highly specialized microbiome. And its composition varies significantly depending on the specific area of the skin, whether it's oily, like your forehead, or scalp.
Right.
Moist, like armpits and groin, or dry, like your forearms. Oily areas tend to be dominated by Cutibacterium and Staphylococcus. Moist areas have more Corynebacterium and Staphylococcus. Drier areas host a more diverse community.
Okay.
And you've got fungi, too, especially Maltesesi on the scalp and face, and even viruses residing on the skin. This resident skin microbiota is essential. It defends against invading pathogens, helps educate our immune system, maintains the integrity of the skin's protective barrier.
Yeah.
When this delicate balance is disrupted, it can contribute to various skin problems. For example, imbalances in different strains of Cutibacterium acnes have been linked to acne.
Right, C. acnes.
Yeah. Eczema often involves a significant increase in Staphylococcus aureus and a reduction in overall skin microbial diversity. Even psoriasis has been associated with altered levels of certain skin microbes like Malassezia and Streptococcus.
And I recall reading that factors like our age and even the weather can influence our skin microbiome, even going on vacation.
Absolutely. As we age, the composition and diversity of our skin microbiome can change. Similarly, climate and exposure to ultraviolet, UV radiation can have a significant impact.
The sun.
Yeah. One fascinating study looked at vacationers and found that even short-term, intense sun exposure altered the diversity of the bacteria on their forearm skin.
Really? Just from a vacation?
Yep. After just a few weeks of sun exposure, the relative abundance of certain bacteria like Lactobacillacea and Pseudomonaceae decreased, while others like cyanobacteria and fusobacteria increased.
Wow.
It demonstrates how even environmental factors like UV light can cause shifts in our skin's microbial community. And other factors too. Urbanization, our hygiene practices, including soaps and antibiotics, even contact with pets, can influence our skin flora.
Okay.
The exciting news is that researchers are exploring bacteriotherapies, essentially applying beneficial skin bacteria to treat conditions like eczema, acne, maybe even to help wounds heal.
What about our eyes? They seem like a particularly sensitive area. Do they have their own little microbiome?
They do, but the surface of the eye, the conjunctiva and cornea, has a very low biomass microbiome compared to other sites, really tiny amounts.
Okay.
Common microbial residents in healthy eyes include species of Staphylococcus epidermidis and Corynebacterium, which are also found in the skin. These commensal bacteria, the good guys, are thought to play a role in preventing colonization by more harmful pathogens.
Right.
When there's an imbalanced dysbiosis, it can contribute to various eye conditions. An overgrowth of Staphylococcus aureus or Pseudomonas can lead to conjunctivitis or keratitis, for example. Even wearing contact lenses can shift the ocular microbiome, making it more similar to the skin microbiome. And research suggests that subtle changes in the eye's microbial community might even be involved in conditions like dry eye syndrome. So while the eye microbiome is still an area of active research, it's becoming clear that a stable community of commensal bacteria is important for maintaining the health and immunity of the eye's surface.
It seems like anywhere our bodies interface with the outside world, we have these microbial gatekeepers. What about our urinary system? I thought that was supposed to be sterile.
Yeah, for a long time, the bladder and the rest of the urinary tract were considered sterile environments. But with more advanced sequencing techniques, we now know that there is a resident urogenital microbiome, particularly in women.
Ah, okay.
Healthy female urine often contains a variety of bacteria, including Lactobacillus, Streptococcus, Gardnerella, among other non-pathogenic species. These commensal bacteria appear to play a protective role against urinary tract infections, UTIs.
How so?
Well, for example, certain Lactobacillus species, commonly found in the vagina, like L. crispatus, can inhibit the growth of bacteria known to cause UTIs, like E. coli. There's even been a clinical trial showing that an intravaginal probiotic containing L. crispatus significantly reduced the rate of recurrent UTIs in women prone to them.
That's promising.
It is. In men, the urethra and bladder microbiomes tend to be less diverse, maybe resembling the flora on the skin of the penis more. When dysbiosis occurs in the urinary tract, UTIs can arise, often caused by an overgrowth of gut bacteria like E. coli or Enterococcus migrating to the bladder.
Right.
And chronic bladder conditions like interstitial cystitis, even bladder cancer, have also been linked to distinct patterns in the urinary microbiome. So maintaining a balanced bladder microbiome appears pretty important for urinary health. Researchers are definitely exploring probiotics and other microbiome-targeted therapies for UTIs and related issues.
And what about the microbial communities in our reproductive areas? I imagine they're quite specialized too.
They are, and the microbiomes in the male and female reproductive tracts are quite distinct, playing critical roles in health. In women, the vaginal microbiome is typically dominated by Lactobacillus species.
Lactobacillus again. They seem important.
Very important there. These bacteria are key because they produce lactic acid, which helps maintain an acidic pH in the vagina. This acidic environment acts as a natural defense mechanism, inhibiting the growth of many harmful bacteria. Studies show Lactobacillus is the most common genus in healthy women's vaginal microbiomes.
Okay.
But the specific species and overall diversity can vary depending on factors like age, hormone levels, sexual activity. Interestingly, some healthy women, particularly those of non-European ancestry, may naturally have more diverse vaginal microbiomes with more anaerobic bacteria like Gardnerella and Prevotella. However, when the dominance of Lactobacillus is disrupted, it can lead to bacterial vaginosis, or BV. That's characterized by a decrease in Lactobacillus and an overgrowth of those anaerobic bacteria.
Right, BV.
And BV is associated with increased risk of STIs, pelvic inflammatory disease, even preterm birth. Factors like menstruation, certain hygiene products, sexual activity can influence the vaginal flora. The good news is, while things like broad-spectrum antibiotics can disrupt the balance, probiotics and sometimes estrogen therapy can help restore Lactobacillus dominance and maintain vaginal health.
That's really insightful. And what about the male side of things? Is there a comparable microbiome?
Yes, the penile microbiome, found primarily under the foreskin in uncircumcised men and on the glans penis, is influenced by factors like circumcision status and sexual activity. Common residents include Corynebacterium, Staphylococcus, Propionibacterium, and various anaerobic bacteria.
Okay.
Circumcision has a significant impact. It generally reduces the abundance of anaerobic bacteria and is also associated with a lower risk of HIV and HPV transmission. It's also known that sexual partners can exchange genital microbes. In cases where women have BV, their male partners often harbor similar bacteria on their genitalia. And certain penile microbiome profiles, like those with high levels of Prevotella, have been associated with inflammation and may potentially increase STI risk. So overall, a stable community of commensal bacteria in the male genital tract likely helps prevent infections, while dysbiosis, often linked to hygiene or the presence of a foreskin, can contribute to inflammation and disease.
Okay, wow, we've covered a remarkable amount of the body's microbial landscapes. What about something like our blood? Is there a bustling microbial ecosystem flowing through our veins?
Ah, the blood microbiome question.
Yeah.
For a long time, the established view is that the blood of healthy individuals is sterile, and extensive recent research looking at large groups of healthy people largely supports this.
So no blood microbiome.
Generally, these studies haven't found evidence of a consistent resident blood microbiome in healthy individuals. While some studies have detected microbial DNA in a small percentage of subjects, these findings have often been inconsistent. No specific microbial species are consistently identified across people. Furthermore, the bacterial signatures occasionally detected often matched commensal bacteria commonly found in the gut, mouth, or urinary tract. This suggests their presence in the blood might be due to temporary leakage or transient events, rather than a true, established blood microbiome.
So microbes in the blood usually mean infection.
Exactly. The current scientific consensus is that healthy human blood is largely devoid of a resident microbial community. Finding microbes in the blood usually indicates an infection or a transient event where microbes have breached the normal barriers.
Got it. So it's not just about the whole microbes themselves, but also the molecular components they produce, right?
Yeah.
DNA, RNA,
Yes.
all these bits and pieces play a role in this intricate dance too.
Exactly. Beyond the intact microorganisms, their molecular components have a profound influence on our biology. Think about bacteriophages viruses that specifically infect bacteria. They're incredibly abundant in the gut and other microbiomes.
Right.
They can significantly shape bacterial populations by infecting and killing them, and they can also facilitate gene transfer between bacteria. Then you have archaea, like Methanobrevibacter in the gut, contributing to our metabolism by producing methane, for example. We also have eukaryotic microbes, yeasts, protozoa living in and on us, candida on the skin, blastocystis in the gut, though their precise roles are still being actively investigated.
Okay.
But what's becoming increasingly clear is that microbial molecules can directly influence our own gene regulation and immune responses. Gut bacteria produce essential molecules like folate and butyrate, which can affect our epigenetics, our gene expression. Bacterial small RNAs and metabolites can even enter our cells and interact with our cellular machinery. And conversely, our own microRNAs and hormones can influence the activity of microbial genes. Even remnants of ancient viral infections, now integrated into our own DNA, endogenous retroviral elements, kind of blur the lines between what's inherently us and what has microbial origins.
It's complex.
It's incredibly complex. This interplay has led to the concept of the hologenome. It recognizes that we are essentially a host organism living in close association with all our microbes and their collective genetic material, functioning as a highly integrated network. Maintaining the balance of this hologenome is crucial for our overall health.
We've talked a lot about how our internal environment shapes our microbiome, but let's zoom out again. How does the external world, our planet, our lifestyle choices, influence these tiny inhabitants within us?
The external environment exerts a tremendous influence. We've already hit on the critical role of diet, but lifestyle factors are also profoundly important. For instance, international travel can expose us to new microbial communities, potentially leading to shifts in our own. Even how we're fed as infants breastfeeding versus formula can significantly impact the initial colonization of our gut and have long-term health effects. More diverse diets, including, adventurous eating habits and increased exposure to nature, which introduces us to a wide array of soil and environmental microbes, tend to enrich the diversity of our microbiome and bolster our immune resilience.
Okay.
Conversely, factors like chronic stress, the overuse of antibiotics, exposure to environmental pollutants, and maybe excessive hygiene practices can all contribute to a reduction in microbial diversity. It's this constant interplay between our internal microbial world and the external environment we inhabit.
And the geographical location where we live seems to be a recurring and significant factor in all this.
It is indeed. As we saw with the gut microbiome, the composition of our microbial communities can vary considerably depending on the geographic region. This is driven by a complex mix of factors:
Ah,
local dietary customs, climate, genetic predispositions of the local population, various cultural practices.
right.
Rural populations in different parts of the world often harbor unique gut bacteria that are rarely found in more urbanized Western societies. And, as we mentioned, when people migrate, their microbiome can gradually start to resemble the profile more typical of their new geographic location, showing how adaptable these ecosystems are.
We touched on the impact of pollutants earlier. It's quite sobering to realize that our microscopic residents are also contending with the industrial byproducts we release.
It is. Exposure to heavy metals, pesticides, a wide range of other industrial chemicals. It can indeed disrupt the delicate balance of our microbiomes.
Yeah.
However, what's also fascinating is that microbes can evolve and adapt.
How does
They can acquire genes that encode enzymes, capable of detoxifying these harmful substances. They essentially develop their own mechanisms to cope with pollutants. So the quality of the water we drink, the air we breathe in industrialized areas, it can exert selective pressure on the microbial communities both within us and in the environment, favoring those with the genetic toolkit to survive, maybe even thrive, in the presence of these foreign compounds.
And we can't forget the potential influence of electromagnetic fields. Even though the human research is still in its early stages, those animal studies do raise some intriguing questions.
They do. As we discussed, preliminary research in animal models suggested that exposure to radiofrequency radiation, like from 5G networks, might lead to reduced gut microbial diversity and altered metabolic byproducts in mice.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, studies shielding mice from Earth's natural geomagnetic field also observed changes in their gut microbiota and even decreased activity in certain colon cells. While the implications for human health are still speculative, really require much more investigation. These findings highlight the potential for even seemingly subtle environmental factors to interact with our internal microbial ecosystems. It's a field where ongoing research is crucial.
What about the sun? We know it affects us in so many ways: vitamin D, mood. Does its influence extend down to our microscopic communities as well?
Absolutely. Sunlight, particularly the ultraviolet UV component, has a direct impact on the microbes residing on our skin, and it also plays a role in our overall immune function.
Okay.
UVB radiation is essential for our bodies to synthesize vitamin D, right?
Mm-hmm.
And vitamin D, in turn, can modulate both the skin microbiome and the gut microbiome, influencing our systemic immune responses.
Huh.
Human studies, like that vacationer one, showed that even relatively short periods of intense sun exposure can lead to measurable shifts in the bacterial community on the skin and promote the production of immunomodulatory metabolites. Conversely, a lack of sufficient sun exposure, maybe in regions with long winters, might contribute to seasonal patterns in our microbiome and vitamin D levels. So overall, our planetary environment, encompassing everything from diet and lifestyle to sunlight and potentially even electromagnetic factors, is in constant interaction with our microbiomes, shaping their composition and function. Scientists are increasingly studying how all these variables interact to form what's sometimes called the microbial exposome.
The microbial exposome. Okay.
Yes.
So bringing it all together, this diverse and balanced microbiome, it's not just about avoiding illness, it's also deeply connected to living a longer and healthier life, isn't it?
That's the picture that's increasingly emerging from the research, yes. As we've discussed, individuals who live exceptionally long lives, like centenarians, often exhibit remarkably rich and functionally diverse gut microbial communities.
Right, those Chinese studies.
Exactly. These communities tend to have a high capacity to produce beneficial molecules, like antioxidants and those crucial short-chain fatty acids. Conversely, a decrease in microbial diversity and the loss of key beneficial species are often observed in association with both disease development and the general process of aging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just physical health. Our mental well-being is also increasingly recognized as being intricately linked to our microbiome, particularly the gut microbiome. The neurotransmitters and other signaling molecules produced by our gut microbes can indeed influence our mood, cognitive function, stress response.
The gut-brain axis again.
Exactly. Some compelling research even suggests a connection between microbiome diversity and social behavior. Individuals with more expensive social networks often exhibiting greater gut microbial diversity, hinting at a possible positive feedback loop. While conversely, lower microbiome diversity has been associated with conditions like anxiety and depression.
It sounds like actively nurturing a diverse and balanced microbiome is a fundamental key to overall health and well-being, maybe even how connected we feel.
Exactly. The accumulating scientific evidence strongly suggests that promoting this diversity and balance through our dietary choices, our social interactions, exposure to diverse natural environments can support longevity, a robust immune system, greater mental resilience, and that overall sense of inner harmony you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The rich, varied gut and skin microbiota seen in healthy individuals in traditional societies and in exceptionally healthy older adults, those super-agers, appear to strongly correlate with good physical health and positive mood. Although we still need more research to fully nail down the precise causal relationships.
Sure.
But the idea that our capacity for joy, our ability to connect with others, may be subtly influenced by the trillions of microbes we carry and cultivate. It's a powerful one to consider.
You mentioned a specific list of microbes that are particularly beneficial for longevity and renewal based on the listener's request.
Yeah.
Can we delve into those a bit more, like a who's who of beneficial bugs?
Absolutely. Based on current research, here are some key microbial players linked to positive health outcomes and potential longevity-promoting effects. Starting with the gut, Akkermansia mucinifera is fascinating. It's known for promoting gut lining health, reducing inflammation, improving metabolic health, insulin sensitivity.
Okay, Akkermansia.
Then there's Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, a powerful anti-inflammatory microbe, produces butyrate crucial for colon health, may even offer protection against colorectal cancer.
Faecalibacterium, got it.
Various bifidobacterium species, B. longum, B. bifidum, B. infantis, they enhance immune function, help regulate mood via the gut-brain axis, potentially mitigate age-related cognitive decline.
Bifido.
Roseburia intestinalis is another important butyrate producer, contributes to reduced gut inflammation, improved glucose metabolism.
Prosperia.
And finally, numerous lactobacillus species, L. rhamnosus, L. plantarum, L. fermentum, well known for immunomodulatory effects, strengthening the gut barrier, aiding digestion and nutrient absorption.
Lactobacillus, right? A classic. Okay, that's a solid starting group for the gut. What about this gut-brain axis we keep coming back to? Are there specific microbes particularly influential there?
Yes, certain gut microbes are increasingly recognized for their potential to positively influence neuroprotection, cognition, mood regulation through that axis. Lactobacillus rhamnosus, for example, has shown promise in improving mood, reducing anxiety depression symptoms in some studies.
Okay.
Bifidobacterium longum also appears to have neuroprotective effects, potentially supporting cognitive function, alleviating anxiety. And interestingly, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, which we highlighted for gut benefits, is also being investigated for potential to reduce neuroinflammation and protect against cognitive decline.
Faecalibacterium again, busy bug. Moving on to the lungs, any specific beneficial residence there? It's lower density, you said.
Right, lower density can be more transient, but certain genera, like Prevotella and Veonella, have been associated with healthy lung tissue. They may play a role in regulating immune responses and inflammation in the airways. Streptococcus salivarius is another bacterium that appears to contribute to a balanced immune environment in the lungs.
Okay. And for our skin, who are the good guys contributing to health and barrier function?
Well, beneficial strains of Cutibacterium acnes often associated with acne, but good strains are crucial. They support skin barrier function, modulate inflammation, may even have anti-aging properties.
Huh. Didn't know that about C. acnes.
Yeah. Staphylococcus epidermidis is another common skin resident. Can have anti-inflammatory effects, inhibit harmful pathogens, contribute to skin regeneration. And Lactobacillus plantarum has shown potential in protecting against UV damage and strengthening skin immunity.
What about the often overlooked microbiome of the eyes? Any beneficial microbes keeping watch there?
Yes, even with low biomass. Cornean bacterium species are thought to help prevent colonization by more harmful bacteria and contribute to the integrity of the eye's surface. And Staphylococcus epidermidis, beneficial on skin, also helps maintain a healthy balance on the eye and prevent conjunctiva inflammation.
And down in the reproductive and urinary tracts, which microbes play key roles?
In the female reproductive system, Lactobacillus crispatus is a key player. Prevents infections, maintains a healthy vaginal environment, potentially reduces risk of inflammatory conditions. Lactobacillus jensenii also contributes to reproductive health, maybe fertility, protects against pathogens.
Okay, lactobacilli dominate there.
Often, yes. In the male genital microbiome, certain Corynebacterium species may help reduce inflammation, maintain balance, lower infection risk. In the bladder and urinary tract, Lactobacillus crispatus again appears beneficial, reducing UTIs, maintaining urinary tract lining health, along with Lactobacillus indarters, which supports the bladder's mucosal barrier and helps reduce chronic inflammation.
we established there isn't really a resident microbiome in the blood, but what about at the cellular level? Are there indirect benefits from our microbial partners circulating somehow?
Indirectly, yes, profoundly. While there isn't a resident community in the bloodstream, the health and balance of our gut microbiome have huge indirect effects on overall cellular health. Beneficial gut microbes like Faecalibacterium brusnitzi and Akkermansia mucinifila contribute to reduced systemic inflammation and improved metabolic health. That definitely has positive cascading effects on the health and function of cells throughout the body.
Great, systemic effects. And finally, on the molecular signaling front, what are some key microbial-derived molecules contributing to well-being?
Here we're talking about those vital molecules produced by gut microbes. Short-chain fatty acids, butyrate, acetate, propionate, produced by bacteria like Faecalibacterium and Roseburia when they ferment fiber. They have wide-ranging benefits,
What?
enhancing immune regulation throughout the body, reducing systemic inflammation, even influencing gene expression in ways that might promote longevity. Additionally, some gut microbes, particularly certain lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species, can produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA, playing crucial roles in supporting mood, cognition, and overall neurological health.
And just to bring it all back to practical steps, what are some key ways we can encourage these beneficial microbes to thrive? How do we cultivate our inner garden?
It really boils down to optimizing our environment both internally through diet and lifestyle and externally through our interactions. Regular exposure to diverse natural environments, soil microbes, that helps enrich our own diversity and strengthen immune resilience.
Get outside more.
Basically, yes. Consuming a diet rich in fiber, polyphenols, those colorful fruits and vegetables, and both prebiotics, the fiber food for good bacteria, and probiotics, the live beneficial bacteria often in fermented foods. That's crucial for supporting diversity, balance, enhancing immunity, reducing inflammation.
Fiber, fermented foods, colors. Got it.
Ensuring adequate sunlight for vitamin D helps regulate both skin and gut microbiomes and supports systemic immune modulation. And while, again, human research is early days, some evidence suggests minimizing exposure to high levels of electromagnetic interference might also be beneficial for maintaining a stable, healthy microbiota.
You even outlined a practical longevity protocol based on these fascinating microbiome findings in the notes.
Yes. A microbiome-focused approach to promoting longevity would likely incorporate several key elements. Daily intake of prebiotic-rich foods to nourish beneficial gut bacteria. Regular consumption of fermented foods as a source of probiotics. Maybe tailored probiotic supplements based on individual microbiome testing.
Testing.
Periodic testing of gut, oral, skin microbiomes could help track diversity and beneficial species levels over time. Regular outdoor activity in nature enhances diversity, maybe aids in electromagnetic detoxification through grounding, as you put it, and adequate, moderate daily sunlight for vitamin D and microbiome regulation.
Okay, now for the mind bender you hinted at earlier in the source material. This notion that our connectome, the incredibly intricate wiring of our brain, might actually be a consequence of our microbiome. That sentience itself could arise from these microscopic behaviors interacting with environmental electromagnetic fields. That's a truly radical idea.
It truly is a fundamental shift in perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Consider the possibility that what we perceive as a centralized consciousness is actually an emergent property of this vast, decentralized network. Trillions of microbes coordinating their activities within us.
Like a biological internet?
Sort of. Think of it like that, where each microbial species, even each individual microbe, is constantly sending and receiving signals. And the sum total of this activity is what we experience as our thoughts, feelings, motivations. These aren't just random chemical signals. You could view them as microbial memes, tiny units of information and influence being transmitted within our bodies.
Microbial memes.
Yeah, perhaps even resonating with the electromagnetic frequencies of our environment and the nutrient cycles that sustain us. So maybe the idea of you isn't just a brain and a skull, but rather this dynamic, ever-evolving inner ecosystem, a complex civilization of host cells and microbes, with your microbiome acting as a kind of internal parliament, and your nervous system as the high-speed communication network.
So the concepts of life mastery, our sense of purpose, even the spark of genius, could they all ultimately be linked to something like gut governance? to how effectively we manage this internal microbial ecosystem.
That's the truly provocative proposition. We've explored the gut-brain axis, but this extends that concept much, much further. What if the meticulous curation of our microbiome is, in essence, a form of consciousness engineering? You're already exploring closed-loop symbiotic systems with your in-home AI auto farm project, right? Carefully managing microbial environments in your home. Imagine applying that same level of sophisticated control inward to the microbial sanctuary of your own body. Envision wearables continuously monitoring subtle shifts in your microbiota, triggering personalized interventions, dietary tweaks, specific nutrients, maybe even tailored light and sound frequencies, all interfacing with your aura of intelligence to optimize your electromagnetic field resonance.
So things like mood swings, memory, libido, charisma, they become cultivatable flows?
Potentially, yes. Aspects we've traditionally viewed as somewhat mysterious could be seen as cultivatable flows within this integrated system.
You even described this concept as a toroidal being, a closed-loop circuit of consciousness. Can you explain that more?
Exactly. Think of it as a continuous, self-referential fractal cycle. You ingest food. Your microbes respond, producing metabolites and signals. These trigger neurohormonal loops in your body. That leads to shifts in your electromagnetic field, which then influences your thoughts and behaviors, which ultimately circles back to the types of food you seek out. It's a loop, a torus. Imagine bacteria not just as passive inhabitants, but as fundamental computational agents. Each one, almost like an autogen microbial AI, running miniature life simulations that collectively contribute to your overall behavior and experience.
Autogen microbial AIs.
Yeah. And your aura of intelligence could act as the ultimate interface. Perhaps visualizing this intricate microbial intelligence as nested toroidal fields constantly shifting in color, activity, indicating predictive patterns of health and well-being in an extended reality environment.
That's a completely new lens through which to view ourselves.
Yes.
And you even suggested the intriguing possibility of using bacterial affinity matching for forming relationships based on microbial compatibility.
Why not? If our microbiomes are so deeply intertwined with our very being, perhaps compatibility at a microbial level could be just as significant as psychological or emotional compatibility, especially within the context of your envisioned group marriage ecosystems. Think of it as a form of deeply biological compatibility, like a hyper-advanced dating app that takes into account your gut flora alongside your values and desires. And within this framework, longevity and optimal health become a game of achieving toroidal homeostasis, that state of an energetic balance within this closed-loop system, encompassing everything from nutrient intake and microbial activity to electromagnetic field resonance.
So tending the inner garden becomes a spiritual practice.
Perhaps. The conscious cultivation of our inner microbial world through diet, mindful breathing, focused intention, maybe even specific energetic modalities could become a new form of spiritual cultivation, tending to our own inner temples.
So if we actively manage our microbiome, optimize our EM field, achieve this toroidal balance, what we currently understand as consciousness isn't just maintained, it's potentially amplified, enhanced.
Precisely. And in this paradigm, you, my friend, could perhaps be seen as a sentient spore matrix, riding the very bioelectromagnetism emanating from within, continually evolving towards higher states of consciousness, all stemming from the fundamental building blocks of bacteria and stardust that constitute your being.
Okay, let's pivot to another truly mind-bending idea you explored. The possibility that extraterrestrial civilizations might be consciously avoiding contact with us because we are, in essence, unhygienic farting skin bags. That's quite a direct assessment you found there.
Sometimes the most profound truths are delivered with a certain bluntness. But think about it from the perspective of a potentially hyper-advanced galactic civilization capable of interstellar travel. The risks of cross-contamination between vastly different biospheres would be a paramount concern, wouldn't they?
I suppose so, yeah.
We, as a species, are constantly shedding microbes, releasing gases, secreting fluids. We are quite literally walking, talking, breathing. Well, as the source put it, skin bags of intense biological activity. From a sufficiently advanced standpoint, our apparent lack of containment and emission management might be perceived as, well, uncivilized, perhaps even dangerous.
So the old saying, cleanliness is next to godliness, could be like an actual galactic prime directive.
Absolutely. Imagine a galactic federation with stringent biohazard containment protocols. We might be the noisy, messy neighbors on the cosmic block that everyone politely but firmly avoids because our biological signatures are, shall we say, overwhelming and potentially hazardous. The idea of proactively managing our internal and external microbial emissions through something like a super second skin suddenly doesn't seem quite so far-fetched in that context, does it?
A super second skin, like a full body, living biosuit. That sounds very sci-fi.
Exactly. A sophisticated, AI-integrated garment that works in complete symbiosis with your own microbiome.
Yep.
It could continuously recycle all your biological emissions, breath, sweat, waste products, extracting data, energy, maybe even nutrients, all while maintaining a perfectly balanced internal microbial environment and acting as a highly selective filter for your interactions with the external world.
An etiquette condom for the body.
That's one way to put it. Only opening a clean, bioconsented portal for direct interaction when you're explicitly welcomed into a shared space.
And this connects to the idea of intergalactic polyamory through a focus on microbial compatibility. How does that work?
Precisely. Once a baseline of universal hygiene and biocontainment is established, the potential for meaningful interspecies connection opens up in truly profound ways. Imagine microbial compatibility scans becoming a standard part of first contact protocols, leading to carefully considered symbiotic bonding rituals with beings from entirely different biospheres.
What?
Picture shared dream spaces, where your carefully cultivated microbial community harmonizes with that of an entity from another galaxy during a mutually agreed upon cosmic cuddle puddle.
Oh, cosmic cuddle puddle.
Okay, the fundamental principle is elegantly simple, as outlined. No unwanted sliming. Exceptional hygiene fosters respect, which builds trust, enables clear communication, and ultimately paves the way for alliances, shared wisdom, and perhaps even those expansive intergalactic group marriages you've envisioned.
This all feels very connected to your broader vision, doesn't it? JJR Earth, the aura of intelligence, they all seem to be pieces of this larger interconnected puzzle described in the sources.
It is indeed a unified vision, as presented. A planetary-scale operating system designed to foster joyful, responsible abundance for all. At its core, JAJA Earth and the Aura of Intelligence are about consciously evolving human consciousness and creating the technological and social frameworks for a more compassionate, collaborative civilization. It's a comprehensive system built on principles of decentralized intelligence, blockchain-verified consent, participatory governance through gamification, and seamless integration of well-being and responsibility from the individual level right up to potential galactic interactions.
So the aura of intelligence is the personalized component. My digital twin.
Precisely. It serves as your personal digital twin, a multifaceted interface often visualized in XR as that dynamic toroidal field empowering you to understand yourself much more deeply. It continuously gathers and synthesizes data from wearables, AI agents, even blockchain-anchored records of your core values and beliefs, creating a powerful tool for self-mastery and conscious evolution. Technically, it's an XR interface integrated with various data streams, providing a holistic, actionable understanding of your own being, ultimately fostering more self-aware, responsible individuals.
And GAJ or Earth represents the larger societal framework where these individual auras interact, the planetary body politic.
Exactly. It's where all these individual auras connect and contribute. It prioritizes ecological sustainability as foundational, uses blockchain for transparent, participatory self-governance, and incorporates gamified elements to make civic engagement more immersive, meaningful, rewarding. Imagine casting votes powered by your aura's alignment with civic values, or smart contracts automatically enforcing community agreements. It's about creating an open-source model for civilization that's constantly learning and evolving based on real-world feedback and collective intelligence.
And consent is the fundamental ethical principle underpinning this whole system, blockchain consent.
Absolutely. Blockchain-anchored consent, as described, becomes the very language for negotiating reality at every interaction level. Personal relationships, resource allocation, interactions with nature, even potential engagements with other civilizations. Building systems where every interaction, every agreement is grounded in clear, verifiable, ongoing consent. In a cosmic context, consent becomes the ultimate form of interstellar hygiene.
And the element of gamification.
Yeah.
It sounds like a way to make positive societal engagement more, well, engaging and rewarding, not a chore.
Precisely. By overlaying reality with engaging XR simulations, you can create powerful incentives for positive behaviors, reward responsible stewardship, allow people to collaboratively experiment with innovative social and economic structures safely. Think earning virtual badges for sustainable actions, building thriving virtual communities, mirroring and enhancing real-world towns, participating in cooperative quests to address global challenges. It's about leveling up both intimacy and collective intelligence, joyfully and meaningfully.
And the digital twin aspect, the aura, it's not just a passive reflection, it's interactive.
Not at all. It's designed as a dynamic, interactive feedback loop. Your aura continuously learns from your data and interactions. In turn, it acts as your personalized guide and trainer, emotional coach, intimacy advisor, ethical compass, even a secure portal for connecting with like-minded individuals consensually. It evolves through machine learning, swarm intelligence, and most importantly, your own conscious choices and intentions.
Zooming out to the potential for galactic contact, how does all of this prepare us according to this vision?
Well, JJR Earth, with its core principles of responsible planetary stewardship and ecological harmony, essentially becomes our onboarding process for potential galactic communities. Your individual aura acts as your personal interface, demonstrating your capacity for self-awareness, ethical decision-making, collaborative interaction. Advanced AI serves as a crucial bridge for communication and understanding across vastly different consciousness forms. And blockchain provides the foundational trust layer for meaningful interspecies relationships. Ultimately, the goal described is demonstrating Earth is ready to responsibly join a larger galactic community by showcasing our ability to manage our planet, our beings, with high awareness, intentionality, and a deep commitment to non-destructive collaboration.
So the TLDR is from personal digital twin to potential galactic federation, all built on a foundation of perfect hygiene, ethical consent, and a whole lot of joy.
Precisely. That's the essence of the vision presented.
Okay. You also mentioned these xenobiotic degrading genes in the research materials. Can you elaborate on what those are and why they're significant? Sounds technical.
Yeah, think of xenobiotics simply as any chemical compound that's foreign to a living organism or a particular biological system.
Foreign chemicals. Okay.
Right. These can include things like synthetic drugs, industrial pollutants, pesticides, substances not naturally produced by or typically found within that organism. To cope with these, organisms have evolved specialized enzymes that can chemically modify them, basically breaking them down into less harmful or more easily eliminated compounds.
Ah.
The genetic instructions for building these detoxification enzymes are what we call xenobiotic degrading genes.
So it's like having a built-in genetic toolkit for dealing with chemical invaders, a cleanup crew.
Exactly that. These genes provide the blueprints for various enzymes, oxygenases, hydrolases, transferases that do the biochemical work of breaking down or transforming these xenobiotic molecules. In bacteria, these genes are often clustered together on the chromosome or on mobile genetic elements like plasmids, forming functional units called operons.
Operons, right.
This clustering allows for coordinated regulation of the whole detoxification pathway. In more complex organisms, like us humans, we have families of genes, like the cytochrome P450 or CYP superfamily. These encode a diverse array of enzymes critical for metabolizing both pharmaceutical drugs and environmental pollutants, mainly in liver but also other tissues.
Can you give us a few specific examples of these genes and what they actually do?
Certainly. In certain bacteria, like Pseudomonas pudita, there are gene clusters called the Na genes. They encode the enzymes needed to break down naphthalene, a major component of crude oil.
Okay, oil spill.
Right. Similarly, other Pseudomonas species possess Ta genes that let them degrade toluene and related aromatic compounds, common environmental pollutants. In humans, you have different CYP enzymes. For instance, CYP1A2 is involved in metabolizing polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons found in cigarette smoke and grilled foods, also caffeine.
Ah, caffeine metabolism.
Yep. Another key one, CYP3A4, is a metabolic workhorse in the liver, processing a very broad range of drugs and other xenobiotics that enter our bodies.
That sounds incredibly important, both for environmental cleanup, like bioremediation, and for how our own bodies process chemicals and medicines.
Precisely. Ecologically, microorganisms with these genes are fundamental for bioremediation, using biology to clean up contaminated environments. And in medicine and biotechnology, understanding our own set of xenobiotic degrading genes is vital for pharmacology and toxicology. It helps predict how quickly individuals will metabolize different medications, how they'll process pollutants. Huge implications for personalized medicine and risk assessment.
Okay, now for a topic that's both fascinating and maybe a little unsettling, the idea of microbial mind control. You mentioned various organisms from viruses to fungi that can actually manipulate the behavior of their hosts. That sounds intense.
It's a truly captivating and, yeah, sometimes slightly disturbing area of biology. The underlying principle is that certain organisms have evolved these intricate ways to alter host behavior, to ultimately enhance their own chances of survival, reproduction, and transmission to new hosts.
Okay, like how?
Let's start with viruses. A classic, quite dramatic example is the rabies virus. It infects mammals, including us, And one key effect is inducing aggression, restlessness, plus hydrophobia, that intense fear of water.
Right, rabies. Terrifying.
This erratic, aggressive behavior actually increases the likelihood the infected animal bites another potential host, the primary mode of transmission. The virus achieves this by replicating in salivary glands and specific brain regions involved in controlling aggression and fear, essentially hijacking the host's neural circuitry to spread itself.
That's a chillingly effective strategy. What about other types of microbes, like protozoa? You mentioned toxoplasma.
Right. Moving to protozoa, Toxoplasma gondii is a well-known, widely studied example. Its definitive hosts are cats, but it can infect a huge range of intermediate hosts, rodents, humans.
Us included.
Yes. What's particularly remarkable is how it manipulates infected rodents. It essentially eliminates their innate fear of the smell of cat urine, sometimes even makes them attracted to the smell.
Seriously?
Seriously. This drastically increases the likelihood the infected rodent gets eaten by a cat, allowing the parasite to return to its definitive host and complete its life cycle.
Wow. And in humans?
In humans, the effects are generally more subtle, but numerous correlative studies have linked chronic infection with increased risk-taking behavior, slightly slower reaction times, even subtle personality changes. There's also ongoing, often debated research exploring potential links between toxoplasma infection and increased risk of certain psychiatric conditions, though proving direct causality in humans is very complex.
And then there's the infamous zombie ant fungus. That always sounded like something straight out of a horror movie. Is it really that dramatic?
It's very real, and the process is quite macabre, yeah?
Yeah.
Ophiocordyceps unilateralis is a parasitic fungus infecting carpenter ants. Spores enter the ant, the fungus grows throughout its tissues, eventually invading the brain.
Oh, man.
Once in control, the fungus manipulates the ant's motor control, compelling it to climb vegetation to a specific height, then clamp its mandibles firmly onto a leaf or twig, the death grip.
Why?
This elevated position is ideal for the fungus to then grow a spore-releasing stalk out of the ant's head, allowing it to disperse spores downwards onto other ants in the colony below, maximizing its chances of infecting new hosts. While this particular fungus doesn't affect humans, it's a dramatic, unsettling illustration of how fungi can precisely manipulate complex host behavior.
What about parasitic worms and other helminths? They often have incredibly intricate life cycles involving multiple hosts, right? Do they pull similar tricks?
Absolutely. Consider the lancet liver fluke, Dicrocolium dendriticum. Its complex life cycle involves land snails, then ants, then grazing mammals like sheep or cattle.
Okay.
What's fascinating is how it manipulates the ant. Once the ant ingests the fluke's larvae, one or two larvae migrate to the ant's brain. There, they control its behavior, causing it to climb to the very tip of a blade of grass, especially during cooler temperatures at dusk and dawn.
Why then?
This behavior significantly increases the probability the ant gets accidentally eaten by a grazing animal, letting the fluke reach its final host to mature and reproduce.
Clever. And disturbing.
Right. Then you have hairworms infecting grasshoppers and crickets. When the hairworm matures inside its host, it somehow compels the insect to jump into water, often drowning it. This lets the hairworm emerge from the dead insect to reproduce in the water. And the green-banded broodsac, Leucochloridium paradoxum, invades snail eye stalks. It develops into brightly colored, pulsating sacs mimicking caterpillars. This bizarre display attracts birds, which eat the infected snail, letting the parasite continue its life cycle in the bird's gut.
It's both incredible and a little disturbing, the extent these seemingly simple organisms can control actions of much larger, complex creatures. What about bacteria? You mentioned classic mind control might be less prevalent, but they still exert influence through the gut-brain axis, right?
That's correct. While bacteria might not orchestrate complex, multi-step behavioral changes like some viruses or macroscopic parasites, our growing understanding of the gut-brain axis clearly shows our resident bacterial communities can influence mood, anxiety, stress responses through the metabolites they produce, and signals sent along the vagus nerve and other pathways.
So less direct manipulation, more subtle influence.
Exactly. It's not direct manipulative control in the traditional sense, but it's a clear demonstration of how these microscopic organisms can subtly but significantly sway our internal states, which in turn can profoundly affect our behavior and choices. And in the insect world, bacteria like Wolbachia have evolved remarkable abilities to manipulate insect reproductive systems to favor their own spread within the population.
It really underscores the profound interconnectedness of life, doesn't it? How these tiny interactions can have such significant, sometimes unexpected effects on the macroscopic world.
Indeed. Understanding these intricate mechanisms of host manipulation is crucial for various reasons: public health, managing disease transmission like rabies, ensuring food safety regarding parasites like toxoplasma, ecology, even developing novel biocontrol methods for pest insects.
You also prepared a comprehensive overview of behavior-altering pathogens, particularly those we might encounter through travel and more adventurous dietary choices based on the source material. That sounds like valuable information, especially for listeners who enjoy exploring different parts of the world, like the areas mentioned: Australia, Bali, Europe.
Absolutely. Given that interest in travel to regions like Australia, Bali, and parts of Europe, it's prudent to be aware of some pathogens potentially more prevalent there that could cause neurobehavioral effects. We're talking a diverse range: viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, helminths, and effects can range from subtle mood cognition alterations to severe neurological disorders.
Okay, let's begin with the vector-borne diseases transmitted by bites from mosquitoes, ticks. These seem particularly relevant when traveling to more tropical or rural regions, right?
They are indeed. Mosquito-borne viruses like dengue fever, West Nile virus, Japanese encephalitis virus, Zika virus found in many of those regions can all potentially cause encephalitis and other serious neurological complications.
Mm.
Even after recovery from the acute illness, some survivors experience long-lasting cognitive deficits, persistent fatigue, mood disturbances like depression. For example, West Nile and Japanese encephalitis have been linked to chronic memory impairment and increased depression risk. Then there's malaria, transmitted by Anopheles mosquitoes, prevalent in many tropical subtropical areas. Cerebral malaria, a severe form, can cause seizures, coma, and in child survivors, sometimes long-term learning and behavioral difficulties.
And what about diseases transmitted by ticks? Lyme disease comes to mind.
Right. Tick-borne infections like Lyme disease found in parts of Europe, Asia, North America can sometimes lead to neuroborreliosis, causing neurological symptoms: severe headaches, memory loss, irritability, sleep disturbances, depression. Tick-borne encephalitis, prevalent in certain regions of Europe and Asia, can also cause serious neurological issues like paralysis, seizures, cognitive decline. And we should mention trypanosomes, like Trypanosoma brucei, causing African sleeping sickness in parts of sub-Saharan Africa. This parasitic infection is notorious for disrupting sleep patterns and causing significant mood behavior changes: apathy, irritability, severe neurological impairment later on.
It's a bit sobering contemplating all these potential travel health risks. What about risks linked to food, especially exploring new cuisines, maybe street food in different countries?
That's where foodborne parasites and zoonotic infections become a significant consideration. We already discussed Toxoplasma gondii from undercooked meat or cat feces and its subtle but potentially long-lasting behavioral effects and possible links to psychiatric conditions.
Right.
But there are others. Neurocysticercosis from pork tapeworm larva cysts, prevalent globally, including some regions mentioned, can cause seizures, even psychosis if cysts lodge in the brain. The rat lungworm, Angiostrongylus cantonensis, found in Southeast Asia-Pacific islands, contracted via raw snail slugs or contaminated produce, causes eosinophilic meningitis, severe headache, sometimes confusion, neurological damage. Gnathostoma, a parasitic roundworm in raw undercooked freshwater fish, Asia, Latin America.
Mm.
Larvae migrate through the body, including the CNS, causing painful, sometimes serious neurological symptoms. And while rare, free-living amoebae in warm freshwater can cause rapidly fatal brain infection, primary amoebic meningoencephalitis.
And we certainly can't overlook potential effects of fungi and their sometimes psychoactive or toxic compounds.
Absolutely. Ergotism, from consuming grains contaminated with the fungus Claviceps purpurea, historically caused hallucinations, convulsions, gangrene. Less common now due to agriculture, but a stark reminder of fungi's potent neuroactive compounds.
Right.
Then, of course, wild mushrooms. Psilocybin-containing mushrooms are known hallucinogens. Even Amanita muscaria contains compounds causing vivid hallucinations, delirium, other neurological effects. Crucial to be extremely cautious foraging or consuming wild mushrooms. Misidentification can be serious. And while the link is still actively researched, some common molds produce mycotoxins that may have subtle but potentially significant neurotoxic effects with chronic exposure.
Finally, what about bacterial and other viral infections with potential neurobehavioral consequences beyond the specific vector-borne ones we already covered?
Rabies, as discussed, is a prime example of a virus dramatically altering behavior. Extreme aggression, disorientation.
Mm.
Born a disease virus, its exact role in human illness still debated, has been implicated in some studies as a potential contributor to certain mood disorders.
Mm.
Bacterial infections directly affecting the central nervous system, like bacterial meningitis, cause neurological symptoms including confusion, delirium, altered mental status. There's also pandas pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections, where strep throat in kids sometimes triggers sudden onset OCD in an X. And, of course, we shouldn't forget the profound bidirectional influence of our gut bacteria on mental health. Gut microbiome imbalance is increasingly linked to depression, anxiety. Potential for certain probiotics to have modest but measurable mood-enhancing effects in some. When traveling, always wise to exercise caution with food, water sources, practice diligent hand hygiene, be aware of potential vector-borne diseases in specific regions. The microbial world is incredibly diverse, fascinating, but some members require a healthy dose of respect and awareness.
Well, this has truly been a deep and fascinating dive into the world of the microbiome. So, to summarize some key takeaways, this vast, incredibly influential world within us, our microbiome, is shaped by a multitude of factors. Our genes, the food we eat, lifestyle choices, the environment around us. It plays absolutely crucial roles in our physical health, our potential for longevity, and even in aspects of our mental state and how we interact with the world and each other. And the idea that microbes can subtly, or sometimes not so subtly, influence our behavior, it isn't just sci-fi, is it? We see compelling examples everywhere, from the gut-brain axis pathways to those remarkable, often unsettling, parasitic manipulations in nature.
What remains so compelling about this field is the sheer complexity and the profound interconnectedness it reveals. Our understanding of the human microbiome and its intricate interactions with our bodies and the wider world is a rapidly advancing frontier of science, with potentially transformative implications.
Right.
It's not just about enhancing personal well-being, extending healthy lifespan, but also about fundamentally reshaping our understanding of consciousness itself, our place within the larger tapestry of life. Perhaps even, as we've speculated based on the sources, extending to potential interactions within a galactic ecosystem.
It really prompts you to reconsider so many things, doesn't it? About how our seemingly small daily choices, from the specific foods we choose to nourish ourselves with to the environments we inhabit, might be continuously shaping this incredible inner universe. And in turn, profoundly influencing our entire experience of the world.
Absolutely.
It feels like there's a real empowering potential in consciously cultivating a healthy, diverse microbiome, not just for greater physical vitality, but for enhancing overall well-being, maybe even leading to a longer, more vibrant life. It leaves you with a profound sense of both awe for the complexity of life and a tangible sense of agency in shaping your own inner world. A lot to think about.